So, first of all, thank you so much for coming today. We're very excited. This is the first issue of our MagsBC remix session. So, just to give you an overview of what MagsBC Remix is, it's basically a networking event that we're going to be putting on. This is the first issue, but we're looking forward to hosting a number of other ones every month, where we'll bring people from the industry, the magazine industry, but also the publishing industry, and other experts in the field to discuss the topics of the day. So, and today we're, and also for those of you who don't know, the association, MagsBC is an association of magazine publishers. It's meant to bring publishers together to discuss and learn on issues in the industry, but also for professional development and networking. So it's a great association, and we're very proud today to be able to support it with this event. And this first event is also very exciting because we have a fantastic group of panelists here today to discuss blogging. Blogging, which is a new form, a relatively new form of, if you want to come here, there's lots of seats at the front. They're all empty. So blogging, which is a new form of publishing, and that is now being used obviously heavily with magazine publishers, but also for even individuals and other corporations. So we have here 4 different panels that come from different perspectives, and we'll bring in their views and their perspectives on the topic and how they're using their fantastic skills to communicate the message that they're communicating. So here to start, we have Rebecca. She's the voice behind Miss 604. Sorry, I'm forgetting her own phone number. So she's been blogging for a number of years. She's also the author of Blogging to Drive Business. So she's got a great perspective on how she uses her own voice to brand herself and communicate the information. And we have also Remy Scalza, and who is a blogger for Inside Vancouver. Inside Vancouver being a blog that is a blog for Tourism Vancouver. He's an independent journalist and blogger, and so he's going to be bringing a very interesting perspective to this panel. And the third one is Sarah Schmidt. She is online editor for the Vancouver magazine and Western Living magazine. So she comes from a magazine publishing perspective. So she represents obviously 2 big brands with transcontinental media. So she's going to talk about how she used blogs to communicate the voice of those magazines. And finally, we have Lisa Manfield. She's an online editor for BC Living. BC Living, which is a new, relatively new website blog, which is very much in magazine style. So she's going to be able to offer the perspective. All of them have a lot of experience in the magazine publishing and the publishing industry. So it's going to be quite an interesting discussion.
Just another quick introduction about me. I guess I've been publishing online since 1997 when I started a band fan page for a punk ska band out of Florida called Less Than Jake. And in 1997, all you could do was post MP3s on your website, which is really bad. Post concert photos on your website, which is really bad. And it was at that time I was still in high school, and I knew that this internet thing was something that I wanted to be involved with. So I wanted to build websites, I wanted to publish content online in some form. And my online career kind of developed from there. I've been in online media for the last 12 years, doing audio webcasting to podcasting to building WordPress websites. And the blog came about in 2004. I wanted to just do that diary blog thing that everybody was kind of doing. You know, I wrote about my breakfast cereal, I wrote about coyotes in my driveway, and I signed up with miss604.blogspot.com because I didn't want to put my first and last name on there. Anonymous blogging was all the rage. So I put Miss604 on there, wrote about my life, personal things, not too personal, but and it wasn't until a few years later that I kind of decided that this was something that I wanted to do a bit more seriously. I wanted to put my name on it. I wanted to write about something other than me, because I'm not really that interesting. So I wanted to write about things that I love. So Vancouver, the city, I really love about local history, because I love finding out more and sharing more information about Vancouver history. And from 2006 on, my website took a bit of a turn. So I put my name on there, started branding more Miss604, got the .com on there. And I write, I publish 2 to 5 times a day, blog posts about anything from community events to history posts to food, anything happening around Vancouver. And it just, it started from a hobby, from a passion project, and it's turned into a full-time gig for me. So in 2008, I went out on my own, doing a WordPress website development company with my husband. So I've been doing this now for 4 years, and the blog still isn't, it takes up most of my time. It's still not my full-time career. I'm in denial that it's not my full-time career, but it totally is. I do the blog all the time. But yeah, it's just been a bit of a journey, learning how to, put my name on something, keep something Vancouver-related, West Coast-related, even though I'll still throw in posts about my trips to Iowa to visit my husband's family, which are so random. You're reading something Vancouver and then it's like Field of Dreams in Iowa. But there's still things that I enjoy doing, so I like to continue having my voice on my site as well. And I think that brings us up to now. And yeah, so that's all.
Thank you. Remy?
I feel kind of humbled to follow one of Vancouver's digital pioneers. I think we're all really following in Rebecca's footsteps. I just had a question before I started my own introduction. Among the people here, how many have a digital background or are coming from the blogging community? So not many. And how many with a more traditional, I'd say, print, radio, TV background? Okay, many more. All right, I feel at home then. I studied to be a journalist. I got a master's degree in journalism with the intention of being an intrepid magazine reporter, freelance correspondent. And I'm still working my way there. For the past 7 years or so, I've written for newspapers and magazines in the US and in Canada as well, here in Vancouver and across the country. But 3 years ago, I moved from the US to Vancouver, and the media market here I discovered was very different and quite a bit more limited. Not as many outlets, and the pay wasn't the same. And I was lucky enough to get connected with Tourism Vancouver, which at that time had just recently launched its blog called InsideVancouver.ca. They had a single writer at the time doing posts every other day. So that was my first accidental foray into blogging, into the digital world. At first, I think the tendency, maybe among people with similar backgrounds, to treat the blog as an extension of the print universe, using the same kind of story techniques and structure. And with time, it's taken me a few years, honestly. You realize it's a whole different beast. It's a different medium with different demands. You have to deliver the information much faster. It's got to be punchier. And of course, there's so much more opportunity for engagement with the audience and for instant feedback. You know right away if a story has worked or if it's just fallen flat. You could see the analytics behind the scene. So to me, that's still very cool to know right away how much a story is resonating with readers. But I should make a disclaimer. I'm one of 3 main writers on the blog. So in terms of branding, which is the subject of today, those decisions really come from a guy whose name is Darren John. He's the digital media manager at Tourism Vancouver. And I happen to have some words of wisdom from him in an email here regarding the branding of Inside Vancouver. Out of curiosity, has anyone seen Inside Vancouver or read it? Okay, so there's a little bit of familiarity with it. He says, we wanted to break it away somewhat from our main corporate Tourism Vancouver brand so that it would have its own identity. We hired writers from outside the organization to help give authenticity to the content. We didn't want it to be perceived as merely a corporate marketing blog. So that was priority number one. Our mandate is to provide information on the 1,001 different things there are to do in Vancouver. Lots of websites list the obvious and major attractions, but we wanted something that allowed us to showcase the lesser known things to see and do. Having a multi-author blog allows us to get more than one perspective. And finally, we want the content to reflect a Vancouver that is diverse, safe, welcoming, and exciting. So the blog is geared towards both visitors and locals. Obviously, we're pushing out positive content about Vancouver.
That's great. Thank you. Dara? I'm just going to stand up right here. So I am an online editor and the business development manager for Western Living and Vancouver Magazine. So I oversee all of the marketing strategies and online digital strategies for both magazines. And I also do some online writing and editing and things like that. I've been with magazines for 5 years. I've worked in sales, online editorial, print editorial, marketing, kind of all over the place. It's a product of that Vancouver publishing industry is small and you kind of take jobs wherever they open up. But I've got a sort of wide range of perspectives from a lot of different departments, which I think has helped me in navigating the online world. What happened was in 2008, I'd been there about a year, we decided to relaunch vanmag.com. Vanmag.com was actually one of the first print magazines to launch an online website back in the 1990s. And then we pretty much didn't touch it until 2008. So you can imagine the state it was in when we decided to relaunch it. So it was a total go from scratch, start at the beginning. What do we want this website to look like? What do we want it to do? How is it going to be an extension of the print magazine or complement the print magazine? So we went through a whole process of really thinking about what our brands were and how they would exist online. One of the things we decided to do was launch a blog. And obviously the first question we came up with was, well, what is the blog going to be about? Vancouver Magazine is very heavily about food and drink, shopping, city politics, sort of anything going on in the city of Vancouver that would interest Vancouverites. We decided to go with shopping, and we launched a blog called Shop Girl. It's fashion and shopping focused, but it's more service oriented than it is high fashion. It's a lot of like great products you can buy, new store openings, things like that. And that was a conscious decision. We wanted some fashion stuff in there, but we wanted to keep it really service driven so that people were coming to the blog for information about where to go in Vancouver, what to buy in Vancouver. Our website's been really successful since we launched it, and the Shop Girl blog's been doing pretty well. We immediately discovered some of the challenges of having a website and a blog. As Remy mentioned, it's very different from a print magazine. You're not putting out one product every month or 10 times a year. Basically, people want content every single day. And we don't have the capacity to do what Rebecca does and produce 2 to 5 blog posts every day. So we have struggles with our website still. There's a lot of successes we've had, but there's always challenges with staffing and finding the time and the manpower to keep up something like a blog. So we're still learning, and hopefully I can share some of our struggles with you and also some of our successes and maybe help you guys.
Thank you. Now Lisa.
Thank you. So my name is Lisa Manfield, and I'm with BC Living magazine, which is Canada-wide media's first online-only magazine launch. It's been around about 2.5 years, and in that time, it's been relaunched twice since the original launch. My background is actually in print. I started in publishing about 15 years ago, so print, as anyone who started 15 years ago or more would have been in. But I've transitioned in the last 5 years or so to almost exclusively working online. I've worked a little bit with the Tai, with Suite 101, with Arado.com, but came on board at Canada-wide about 2.5 years ago when they conceived of this idea for BC Living. And originally it was a brand designed to take advantage of Olympic-related traffic, and we launched it as an Olympic Games guide just before the Olympics. At the time, what it was designed to do was to take content that was being produced for numerous other titles at Canada-wide Media and aggregate it all under the banner of BC Living, to give people an idea of what was happening in and around Vancouver during the Olympic Games. And it did so well that the company decided to relaunch it as a lifestyle magazine after the Olympics and keep it going. So we relaunched it to include, I believe, 3 main categories. We had travel, health, and home. And since then, we've relaunched it again. We relaunched it again in January to incorporate even more categories of content. So we now have 7 categories, including style, travel, food, home, gardens, entertainment. And the content for those categories comes from a variety of sources. So it's a fairly interesting editorial model and mix. We actually are fed by numerous Canada-wide titles that don't have a website presence of their own. So Canada-wide's strategy, rather than creating unique websites for each of its magazine brands, has been to begin to amalgamate them all under this BC Living banner. So BC Home Magazine, for example, feeds our home channel. Garden Wise Magazine feeds our gardening channel. TV Week Magazine feeds our entertainment channel. And then we have certain sections that amalgamate a variety of different sources. We supplement all of that print content. Well, first I should say that we take all that print content and we adapt it for web, so we make it a little bit more web friendly. And then we supplement all of that content with online-only content that we commission, as well as blogs. So we've got 16 blogs on the site currently. Each section has at least 1 blog. Most have more than 1 blog. Initially, many of those blogs were sort of owned by a particular blogger, but we've recently sort of opened all of them up to multiple authors, because we found that we were just getting so many pitches from people who really wanted to contribute their own voice and their own experiences to these blogs, and we wanted to find a way to allow them to do that. So all of our blogs now are multi-author blogs. Anyone can pitch us and contribute to those. And as I said, the rest of the content comes from, we get a ton of freelance pitches, as well as the traditional print content. So we managed to mix all of that together and make it work in this one BC Living banner, which in and of itself has its own challenges, because we're amalgamating multiple brands together. So perhaps I'll leave it at that for now. So content for print and content for web, as Remy said, they're 2 extremely different media. People, and I apologize, I teach writing for the web at SFU, so I feel like I'm about to launch into my course. Why writing for web is different. But people read so differently online than they do in print. Our attention spans are shorter online. People are scanning more than they're reading full sentences. So, and they're looking for, I sometimes liken it to feeding the beast online, where they really are looking for more content now. Whereas, in print, you're dealing with longer timelines. An issue will go out and, it'll last a while longer, whereas on the web, it's not even 15 minutes of fame anymore, it's 15 seconds of fame, and then they want, the next big story. So you're producing content a lot faster online. And you're really having to package it quite differently from the way you might package it in print. A print story would be a lot longer, for one, in general. The style of writing is often different. There's often sort of a longer kind of narrative introduction, perhaps. Titles are very different online than they are in print. So we have to do some adaptation to the print content that we get for the web. And that will always involve changing the title at the very least. It will often involve if we have the time to shorten the copy, we will do that. We don't often have the time to do that amount of editing, but at the very least, we'll change the title, add some subheadings. We'll optimize it for search, so we'll apply SEO strategies. That's another huge factor with the web. We'll add more images, perhaps. People are very visual online. They want a lot of images. And we might even add multimedia if we're able to, embed a YouTube video. If that applies, we would do that sort of thing online as well. So they're very, very different.
And one thing that is probably interesting to note is that you don't have any original content on your site, correct?
No, that's not true. We have a lot of original content. We commission quite a lot of original content for the site that's produced exclusively for online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anybody else would like to go?
Lisa covered a lot of it. When we are taking print stories and putting them online, it's the same kind of thing. sometimes I feel bad because our print editors will spend all this time thinking of these really clever heads and decks, and then we basically take them and turn it into best Vancouver spas. Something that people are going to be searching on Google. And you feel kind of bad at first, like we have these clever titles and so much time has gone into what the head of things are going to be, and people have found catchy phrases, and it's just much more straightforward. It needs to be something that people can easily find, that if you're scanning the page or catching those keywords. So yeah, you have to think a lot about search engines. If you decide to start a website or a blog, you'll hear SEO, search engine optimization, all the time. Yeah, it's just, and a lot of the same thing Lisa said, we do the same. Sometimes we do print stories, and when we're coming up with the print story, there'll actually be an online component built in. Van Meg did a story back in the fall that was like 100 things to love about Vancouver, and only half of them were in the magazine, and that was done on purpose, and the other half were online. We've also done things where a story will only be able to run a few pictures in the print magazine because we don't have that many pages or something. And there'll be a photo gallery online or a video. We do a lot of videos every month that correspond to the pages in the magazine, so sometimes we're building the print stories with digital components in mind.
And actually, Remy, how does that affect you, all the SEO, when you're writing your articles? Is there a big difference between how you write an article for print and how you write it for blogs?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, when I'm writing in print, I don't think about SEO at all. It's not a factor that comes into my head. Now, when I do the blog, I'm in kind of an advantageous position because I do think a bit about keywords, especially in the title. It has to be straightforward. It can't be any creative, flowery stuff. But when it comes to the body itself, I probably don't do as much SEO as I should. We're in kind of a unique position with our blog because it's supported by Tourism Vancouver. We don't have advertising on the site, so we're not dependent on those consistently getting those hits, which is a nice luxury. So that's where I stand in the SEO spectrum.
Interesting. And I know that you're actually, SEO is a big part of your business. And just for those who don't know what SEOs are, it's obviously search engine optimization. It's making sure that a text is optimized in a way that Google and other search engines are able to pick out the information within the text and then being able to be pulled out in a higher ranking in the search results. So just, but for you, it's a huge part of your business because I'm sure that that's all you're focused on because when you're writing, since your content is only written for blog.
Yeah, content is still king when it comes to SEO, so you still need to have something that people are going to read and they'll want to read. I've searched articles sometimes and it comes up a lot on the WordPress side of things. I'll search like WordPress themes for a magazine, and you'll find an article that says 10 best WordPress themes for magazine. These are the 10 best WordPress themes for magazine. If you want the 10 best themes for WordPress magazine, here's what you're going to do with the 10 best themes. And you're like, oh, and there's really no information. It's all just keywords. So you want to make sure the keywords are there, tags are there, but that your content is still there. It's something that people want to read and be like, I want to share this on Twitter, I want to share this on Facebook, and I get that shareability element too is huge. I think I've published 3 articles in magazines over the years. One in 24 Hours, one in Hopscotch magazine, and one in the Visit Parksville Tourism Guide. So that's my experience with print. and the book, Blogging to Drive Business. But I was talking to TransLink recently, and they were talking about taking their buzzer, their paper bulletin from the bus, and changing that into a blog. And Jennifer, who writes the buzzer, and who started writing the buzzer blog, said kind of what Lisa was saying, that taking that content and putting that teaser for the web. So on the buzzer blog, they talk about the voice on the SkyTrain, the next station is. And then it said, if you want to hear the voice, in a podcast I did with the woman who has that voice, or the C-bus voice, whatever, go to our blog. So kind of that, bringing it back onto the digital. So I thought that was neat.
I don't know, there's kind of, at least on Inside Vancouver, and I imagine this is across lots of blogs, it's more of a, I guess the term is a hacker mentality. Like, I don't think we have an overall umbrella plan of what we're trying to do. We're just getting content out there and letting things evolve organically. For example, the blog started 3 years ago with a single writer. She's a mom in her mid-30s. The content was mainly focused towards families and children's activities. Then I came on board, very different perspective, focused more on food and drink and outdoor things like that. We recently brought on a third person who's younger, much more in tune with the scene in Vancouver, who's brought in a totally different audience with her. Now, do all those three personas coalesce into a coherent voice? I'm not sure, or we haven't put any effort into doing that, but it seems to be working. I mean, our numbers continue to grow, and I think that kind of experimentation definitely is much more part of blogging than magazines, where decisions have to be carefully formulated so much more carefully and in advance. There's so much more at stake.
That's a good point. What about you, Clara? Especially coming from a traditional magazine.
I mean, our blog, the Shop Girl blog, the primary writer and editor is Rebecca Phillips, who's the senior editor for vanmag.com, but I write for the blog, we have interns who write for the blog, sometimes freelancers. I sort of liken it to the magazine. There's all different types of freelancers and writers who all have their own distinct writing style who write for the print magazine. But what gives Vancouver Magazine its voice and its brand is really the editors and the types of stories they choose to accept for the magazine, and how they look at the pieces and the changes they ask writers to make. It's sort of the same on our blog. Even though other people are writing for it, everything goes through the blog's editor, Rebecca, so she's making sure that the stories that are written and the copy that's coming in is consistent with how we see Shop Girl. So in our magazine, the blogs and the online function in the same way that print does. It's the editors who create the magazine's voice, regardless of how many different writers and contributors you have.
And how do you handle all these voices of the different publications you're working with, and then your own voice as well?
Yeah, well, similar to what Tara's saying, I mean, we have an understanding of our demographic and our readership. BC Living's readers are predominantly female, they skew slightly older. And so we always have that in mind when we're commissioning stories. Now, that said, we certainly get content from some of the feeder publications that doesn't necessarily cater to that demographic. And I'm thinking primarily of our entertainment content. But when we commission stories, we do it with that in mind. That doesn't mean we don't have a lot of voices on the site, though, and we do. And it's something I struggle with because, I'm not 100% convinced that people necessarily, I don't want to say they don't care about voice. I think that readers like to read a writer who's got a strong voice and personality. Do they come back because of that? I'm not sure. The majority of our traffic, on a day that we don't have a newsletter going out, the majority of our traffic comes from search. People are going to a search engine and they're looking for specific information. If the information is good, that's the most important thing. They want something that's going to add value to their life. Maybe that will convert them into a return visitor. We hope so. But I think that our stats show that we get more new visitors than return visitors still. But BC Living is still a new brand, so that can change over time. So there are all these factors that we're dealing with, and when Rebecca said content is king, I think that's what it comes down to. People want good, solid content, and they want it to be well written, and they want it to add value to their lives. And whether that's coming from a blogger who's injected some personality into it, or whether it's a more objective, sort of tips-based, best restaurants piece. I don't know if that matters as long as it fills a need that they have.
Interesting. And actually, maybe what you'll be better to answer this question first is exactly how do you manage the personality, the brand of the author of that blog, and also the brand of the corporation. So, and also how do you build this e-brand on this blog? Because for yourself, I mean, you're branding yourself. So how do you manage including yourself within that you're writing and maintaining this own brand for yourself? As an author, sorry. You as a brand and you as an author.
Yeah. I do separate the two. So, I said I started out diary blogging and writing about my personal life, and now I don't do that anymore. I write about the city in general, or if it's a story about something that I experienced, it still is something that my readers can go out and do as well, or I'm encouraging them to do, or an activity, and it's less about my personal life. So for me, it separated my personal life from Miss 604, having that be a resource for the city, and then Rebecca is just this person who runs it all. I do have a few guest contributors, so maybe once a month or so I'll have someone write a theater post, or my sister will contribute something for families, and it's nice to have those little extra voices in there. I like my sister contributing something for families because she has 5 kids, and I have none. So I figure she knows where the best playground park is that's near wherever, in the Fraser Valley or something. But I think having multiple authors as well, you get to have that voice of expertise there. But anyways, for Miss 604 and me, I try to separate them a little bit, but it's, at the end of the day, it still is my site, my voice. It's in the first person, and yeah. But I don't think you could figure out, where exactly I live, or my phone number, or that personal information from my website. So I do like to keep that private still.
One of them, I'd say, has already been touched on a lot, is the content. First and foremost, you need to know what your brand is and who your audience is. Like, what is it that you're setting out to do? If you have a brand, I would say you should have a mission statement. What is it that you're trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And who are you speaking to? And all of your content needs to be related to that. That's not to say that you can't expand your brand and maybe expand into other areas, but if you have a food blog and then you suddenly post about the ballet, is that really relevant, and is that going to speak to your audience? So I think you need to always keep in mind what the content is and have it be relevant to your readers, have it be engaging, interesting, what you want out of content you're reading anywhere. I think it's easy sometimes when it's online just to repost a press release. You'll see that on some blogs, or just throw something up, and you still need to be really thoughtful about it and be thinking about your audience. Don't forget about the visual side of it. Lisa sort of touched on this earlier. People online, they scan and they try to pick up parts, and I find they tend to like things that are PC, and there's lots of little areas where they can get into it. Long-form journalism typically isn't something you'll find on a blog. So a lot of our blog posts, we have slideshows and lots of photos and different things that will attract someone's attention. And another one is usability, that I think, especially coming from a print background, can be easy to miss. It's not like a magazine where all you have to do is turn the page. Once someone gets into your content, how are they going to find your other content? How are they going to navigate to the next blog post? What's going to keep them there? You have to really think about, when someone comes to your site, do they know how to get to the content? And once they're in the content, do they know how to get to other content? That was a big learning curve for us when we started working on the website, was just sort of learning from our web developers all these things that you have to keep in mind when you're doing a website. And we actually had people come in and test out the website, and they sat there and took notes on when they were confused, when they didn't know where to go. They asked them, find a fashion story. And they would watch the person and see if they actually could easily find a fashion story, if they got confused and had to go to Google and search for it there. So I think usability of your blog or your website is something that is really, really important, especially when it comes to getting more page views and keeping people engaged on your site.
Who would like to go next?
I could go. It's going to sound like a broken record, but I completely agree. The content thing, a blog lives or dies on the quality of its content. It has to be original, it has to be insightful. There are quite a few Vancouver blogs, I feel, that simply repost press releases, and we all see these releases, right? So when I see those on a blog, I never want to read that blog again. It's just, and I think more importantly, consumers, readers, I should say, recognize that content. They know when they're being sold to. You could tell marketing copy, right? So if you're going to start a blog, or if you're developing a blog, invest in content, first of all. And then just some much more basic tips on the individual post level. I'd say my personal rule is keep it under 300 words. If a blog post is going over 300 words, you're going to lose readers, and people might never even see that stuff on the bottom. And if you want to dominate the world of blogging in Vancouver, write about street food. It can't go wrong. You'd be amazed. Posts about street food get, many times over as many hits as anything else.
Wow. That's can I just add? We just had an article about the new street food carts, and I wrote down the stats because we were looking at the stats. In the last week, since we posted, we've had 900 visits to the article of the new food carts. So you're right.
So do you want to?
Sure, I can jump in. Just I totally agree with everything you guys have said. Just to not be repetitive, I'll just try to add a few other things. One of the things I try to teach when I'm teaching my course on writing for the web is for writers to be reader-focused as opposed to writer-focused. Because I think when you're trained as a writer, all writers have something that they want to say. But when it comes to online, you really have to flip that around and think, what is the reader wanting to get out of this post? And how can I get that message across quickly and effectively in a way that's actually going to help them? So you really want to try to be reader-focused. And you want to try to, we all get the same press releases. There's always going to be a big story that we want to cover, but if you can add something of value that one of the other blogs perhaps hasn't, a unique spin or whatever it is, find a unique way to present that content. I think that's really valuable. Frequent posting, again, feed the beast. You can't just put up a blog and update it once a month and expect that people will come back, because they won't. If you can do daily, that's awesome. Most of our blogs are not daily, but we try for at least once a week, if not more. And I think the other thing is, the great thing about publishing online is analytics. You get all this data about how many people are coming to your site, what content is working best, how much time they're spending on your pages, where they're coming from, where they're going to. So use those analytics to your advantage. I remember a couple of years ago when it was when Trevor Linden launched his gym. I noticed we had an article on the site that was actually from BC Home, and it was an article about his real estate business. And then the day after he announced his gym, I was looking at the analytics, which I do every morning on the site, and I noticed that the top keyword bringing people to the site was Trevor Linden. And it sort of occurred to me that people coming to the site weren't coming for his article on real estate. They wanted to know about the gym. And so I actually, emailed our blogger, our fitness blogger, and said, I think people are looking for information on this gym. Can you do a quick blog post about it? And the next day he did, and sure enough, the traffic kind of spiked on that blog post because people were definitely looking for information on the gym. So use your analytics and use them to inform what kind of content people are looking for and how you can build traffic based on that.
Any other
That's
golden
it. That's all.
rules?
No. I think just what everyone said is really great, and also being interactive. So if someone takes the time to write a blog post, and you don't usually get comments with people saying that was great. You usually get that was terrible, or that was a typo, or comments usually come when they're more negative. But if you do get a comment, respond to it. If someone asks a question or a follow-up, respond to it. If the comments go on and you're noticing a lot of discussion going on, make a post out of that. If someone adds a bit to a topic that you've covered, and there's interest in the comments for it, or just for Trevor Linden, write about that. Write about Trevor Linden and a food cart. But you can also, I guess when I'm talking to personal bloggers, one thing they have a hard time with, again, is frequency. So finding the motivation to get something published on there. I write Monday to Friday. I don't publish on the weekends because I figured through looking at analytics, I know my audience is very 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So I give them enough information to get them through the weekend. They come back on Monday and I get a weekend off. So that's good. But I don't know what else I was going to say. Analytics, themes as well. So I know that on my site, I'd like to have a history post at least once a week. Some people do Wordless Wednesday on their blog, which is just photos. You can do Theater Thursday. So if you're trying to think of topics, if you don't have a bank of bloggers who are ready to go and you're not pulling, or you've already pulled from your publication, think of a theme and have a Foodie Friday or a Travel Tuesday or something like that, and that will at least keep you going to get fresh content on your blog.
I have one, not for me personally, but for the Inside Vancouver blog. And I forgot to mention this before when you were talking about voice, but I think one thing that we do well is we don't try to out-cool anyone. For better or for worse, we're really not trying to be hip and trendy and use all kinds of jargon. And I think targeting that audience is something that people who blog sometimes overlook. I mean, there's a whole middle of the road crowd out there that wants to be spoken to in plain language, not kind of, 2.0 tech or, so that might be something that Inside Vancouver does well.
That's your gold star.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
speaking plainly.
And then actually, if you think of a blog, what blog out there would you say is your favorite blog? Would you think they're doing it the best? Would you say Inside Vancouver?
In terms of Vancouver blogs or blogging in general?
Oh, we can go global, yeah.
Ooh, I mean, it kind of
Right.
blows it.
All right, if it's too big of a question, we can, I'll let you think about this one. Somebody else wants to say, yeah, Rebecca?
Sure. Well, I read Vancouver's awesome, just because they have so many voices. They have everything from Van City Kitty, which is a cat feature every week. Every now and then, to, who writes Van City Kitty?
Sneaky driver in the back.
Just that they have so much information and so many voices, so many contributors, but it still has the same theme of Vancouver is awesome on it. So, and if you're having a really bad day and you want to go look at something positive, you can go read their site too.
Yeah. So they get your gold star?
Yeah.
Perfect. Jara or Lisa?
Yeah, and in terms of blogs that I like, I love the Cut blog on New York Magazine. It's their fashion blog. It's really smart, well written. They update it a lot. It's great. I love apartment therapy, which when working at Western Living, it's an awesome. They have just so many beautiful apartments in there that are like 400 square feet, and it's very very visual. I like the Sartorialist as well, which is very visual site again. I guess I tend to like blogs that have a lot of visual elements and keep the writing a little shorter.
Says a lot.
Well, I'll give props to one of our bloggers who actually started as an intern with us and quickly became one of our regular contributors, first as a food writer, and then she sort of expanded into travel writing and active sort of lifestyle fitness, right? She kind of actually does it all, except style. She doesn't cover style yet. But unfortunately she's not here, but she just has this very natural personal voice. Like her personality comes through, but not in a way that's forced. And I've seen so many bloggers, struggle to find their voice and force something out that you can tell whether it's overuse of adjectives or just overwriting in some way. It's trying to force a voice that isn't necessarily natural, and her voice just comes through really. She's just super enthusiastic and genuine, and it really comes through in her blog posts. So, yeah, she writes for our What I Made for Dinner blog. And all across the site. So finding a way to have your voice come through, I think, can really be beneficial. And she's, just started as a freelancer when she interned with us, and is doing really, really well. So in terms of other blogs that I like, one of my favorite blogs is Zen Habits, which is a pretty popular blog.
What is it?
Zen Habits. It's called Zen Habits, and it's out of San Francisco, I think. And so, yeah, when things get crazy during the day, I read it and I just sort of relax. It's very simple. There's nothing visual about it. It's white. It's black type on a white background. Don't you hate it? But it's just like the posts are just really, really focused. They are very personal. It's all about the guy who writes it, but useful tips.
Yes.
Don't forget, those are all really important. Don't forget about your metadata either. Meta title is super important, and meta description. But yeah, you want to come up with, your primary keywords, and it is about repetition to some extent. You don't want to repeat so much that you've destroyed the integrity of the content, but you do need a certain amount of repetition in your title, in your introduction, in your photo caption, if you have bold subheadings, and in your meta title and meta description, for sure. The goal is to reinforce what that page is about, so that when a search engine scans it, it goes, oh yeah, this is a page about, Vancouver restaurants or whatever. So, and you want to think about what someone would type into a search engine to try to find that content.
SEO, there's in general, the main search engine is Google. That's, I think, over 90% of search engine traffic online. So Usually when you talk about SEO, you're talking about Google, and they actually look at hundreds of different things when they decide where your ranking is going to be. Some of the most common that you can affect yourself are the ones Lisa mentioned. Another thing, aside from the actual content on the page, how Google reads the page, they also look at your site as a whole. And your site has a ranking in terms of how trustworthy your site is considered to be. And one of the things that makes your site trustworthy by Google is if a lot of other sites point to it. Because, I mean, I guess the Google engineers sort of assume if there's a lot of sites that are linking to you, you're probably not a spam site, because why would someone who's worked on their site link to a spam site? So it's really important to have other sites linking to you, and also for you to link to other sites. We sort of had, when we started it, a bit of a hesitation to link to other sites. We were like, why do we want to send people away from our website to other places once we've already got them on there? But it is really important to link to other websites and have them linking to you. It can really affect your Google search engine ranking. If you're sort of an island in the middle of the sea, no matter how well you work on the page, you're not going to appear on that first page of Google results. And usually the majority of people on Google won't look past the first page. So that's really important. And a lot of it is things that are built into the back end of your site. Even your server, if your server is located in Vancouver and someone's looking for Vancouver on Google, you'll have higher results because of where your server is. So some of it you can affect and some of it you can't. If you have the money, you can hire companies that do search engine optimization and will go into the back end of your site and do all the technical stuff. So it's sort of a huge beast, but in the day-to-day, we focus on a lot of the stuff that Lisa mentioned.
Anybody else would like to add to this? Or?
I'll add to the linking thing.
Yeah.
That's a very good point, and I think that some people think they're publishing a site, they don't need to link any sources, or they don't need to link anyone else. And from the very, very early days of blogging was the blog roll, or a link love list, which I used to call it. Sharing your favorite links, your favorite blogs of your contributors, highlighting them in their work. Those are good ways to get links out, and they'll probably link back into you. And like I'll link Inside Vancouver in a story if they've done something ahead of time, so don't be afraid to link out. It doesn't mean you're going to lose people, it means you're just becoming more of a resource, and you'll still be that hub people go to go out to other places and still come back to you. In fact, my link page is still my number 3 most popular page on my site. So.
That's great. And if you want to know more about search engine optimization, I'll just put a little plug. We're going to have another issue of our remix on search engine optimization. I think that it's in June, so stay tuned.
But social media, we use a lot with both of our magazines, VanMag and Western Living. For both websites, Facebook is actually one of the top 5 referrers to our site, and Twitter is probably in the top 20. Facebook, I actually find a lot more value in than Twitter. Twitter, I find, is really great for building your brand and interacting with people, and it's fun, and it's kind of a cool way to speak to your audience. In terms of actual visits to the site, which are important for us because we do have advertising on our site, and we need our sites to have revenue. Facebook, I've found that I know a lot of magazines find, is a much greater return. We get that traffic to our sites as a top 5 referrer from Facebook, having like 1,400 likes for VanMag, and I think 600-ish for Western Living. They drive huge, huge amounts of traffic, like thousands and thousands of visitors from just a few likes on Facebook. One of the reasons for that is when something goes into somebody's newsfeed, and you're probably all familiar with how Facebook works, but when it goes into their newsfeed, it can stay there much longer as a top story, whereas Twitter, everything's being constantly pushed down. So even though VanMag has 15,000 Twitter followers, when you post something, how many of them are actually on Twitter at that moment? And who knows how many people they're following. If they're following 1,000 people, it's going to be pushed down really, really quickly. Whereas Facebook, your posts have a lot more longevity. When someone then likes your status or shares it, it goes into all of their friends' news feeds and so on and so on. So if I was going to concentrate on one or the other, I would definitely put the efforts into Facebook. It's also a lot easier. Twitter, you have to be on there a lot. People want I mean, not all the time, no one wants to see a trail of posts from you, but you definitely need to post a couple of times a day, and you need to really be reacting to what people are saying on Twitter. You do with Facebook too, but one post a day. We would usually not post more than once a day on Facebook because people can get sick of you very easily if you're showing up with more than once on their newsfeed a day. So it's also kind of easier to maintain.
I have a counterpoint.
Yes?
My vote's for Twitter. Oh, you like Twitter? Yeah. For me, Twitter's my #2 refer to my site, Google then Twitter. And every time I publish a blog post, I do the new blog post, and it does float down. But if you use something like Vancouver Made Hootsuite, you can schedule your tweets. So once a day, I'll just do it in case you missed it, and then repost the link to my post. So if my post went out at 9 a.m., I'll schedule a tweet to go out at 7 p.m. to get the evening crowd and let them know what I wrote at 9 a.m. So for me, it works well now. Well, I just think no matter what you're doing or no matter how many networks you're on, I think just the key is bringing them back in to your site, because that's where you do have your ads on your site, and that's where the bigger conversation can take place. But go ahead.
I think you also really need to think when you're doing social media, it's better to choose one or two that you can do really, really well than have, a force heap of all of these accounts where you're posting on them like once a month. And the other thing is you have to be really aware on social media what people are saying about you. And that's not necessarily something that's going to be in your feed. Like, you need to be searching for your brand on there. Like, I would go on and search like Vancouver Magazine, Van Mag. Like, there's things that you won't necessarily see in your feeds on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, but you need to know what people are saying about you, and you need to manage that and respond to things. So if you have, 5 or 6 different social media accounts that are all linked to your brand that you're trying to keep up yourself, you might be overextending yourself. And so I would say choose 1 or 2 that work for you. Western Living, we actually just put on Pinterest not that long ago. We wanted to put Western Living on there because Western Living is a very visual magazine. Anyone who picks up the magazine, it's got beautiful photography. We have wonderful art directors. So Pinterest is extremely, extremely visual. So it sort of made sense for us to put Western Living on there. We just have a few boards going, not too many. There's like maybe 7. 3 of them are food related, the rest are homes related, and it's actually already in our top 20 refers to our site. And I know a lot of big publications, especially in the States, that have done really good jobs on Pinterest have seen massive amounts of traffic, like millions of hits coming from Pinterest. So it's really interesting, and I think it has a lot of potential, but make sure that it suits your brand and that you have the time to put into it, because you need to be repinning other people's things, not just pinning your own thing. And same with Facebook and Twitter. You can't just feed your own content, you have to comment on other people's and post things that aren't necessarily just from your own. So.
Would you like to add anything else?
Yeah, we just started with Pinterest as well. We have an amazing intern who has built us many beautiful boards. Same reason, we've got very visual content, and it's a natural fit. And it's already jumped into the top 5 referrers for our site, so it's doing incredibly well. But I admit, I don't know that we spend a lot of time repinning other people's pins because, it's an investment of time. So I think we're quietly hoping that Google Plus will fade away. I still don't get Google Plus. We haven't figured out how. It's different enough from what we're already doing on Facebook and Twitter, and quite frankly, we don't have enough time to deal with it, so we haven't yet. But it makes sense for some of the other brands. For BC Business, which is another countywide publication, Pinterest doesn't make any sense, but Google Plus does make more sense. So they're spending more time there, and they've spent more time on Tumblr. You really do have to pick and choose if your time and resources are limited.
And actually, you as an author, of a blog, do you use social media to promote your voice on the blog, or is it mostly the corporation that you use?
Yeah, just the way we use social media, I was going to mention that, on the most basic level, not to get too complicated, I think it's pretty critical to have that accompanying Facebook page, if nothing else. We're lucky enough to have something like 25,000 fans on Facebook, or likes on Facebook. So when a post goes up, there's an update on Facebook, and suddenly there's all that traffic in there. And that's something that you could accrue organically over time. So I the simplest level. Would that be right to have a Facebook page?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook is so established that I do think now you kind of have to have a presence. Same with Twitter. So, but again, it depends on whether your audience is there.
I think a comment policy is a good thing to have on any blog. Just letting people know what you will accept, what you won't accept, what you tolerate, what you won't tolerate. And if you do get those really, I'll let a comment go through if it's negative. If it's, insulting my mother, I won't. But if it's constructive or it can add to a discussion or something, yeah, let it go through and let that develop on the post. If it's something, really bad, or something that you've determined you don't want to publish because you're responsible for what's on your site, you can email a person privately, follow up privately with them. And usually when you initiate that, especially if it's an anonymous comment, usually when you initiate that one-on-one contact, things kind of mellow down a bit. But let them know why their comment's not being published, or something like that. But yeah, you can publish negative comments if it adds to a discussion. And then, yeah, a comment policy. I put one on my site maybe about just over a year ago. I already had it in my head. I never had it public. But sometimes I'll see a comment and it's like, yeah, right, and just delete that one. But if it's something that actually, even if it's pointing out my typos, I let it go and thank you for pointing that out.
Anybody else would like to address this question?
I think Rebecca covered really well. Comments on your own site, we follow like a similar kind of thing. In terms of what people say about you on maybe like social media or something, we follow something similarly. If it's just someone saying some crazy, negative comment just to be negative, or if they don't like a story we ran or something, that's legitimate if they disagree with the story or something like that. If it's a legitimate, like, almost like customer service type complaint about the magazine, like they feel that maybe we've run advertising that shouldn't be in the magazine, or they think that we've sort of, crossed the line somewhere, we will sometimes respond to them. Sometimes I will, sometimes editors will. If they have questions about, maybe we run a story and they're saying, I don't think this is true, what were your sources? The editors will sometimes respond to that and say, actually we spoke to these people, this is where it came from. So it really depends on the nature of it, but you do need to keep an eye out on social media for what people are saying about you. It happens all the time with like cell phone companies and stuff. Someone will complain about it and it'll get all retweeted, and you'll see like the company will immediately go in and say, oh, don't worry about that, we'll fix your plan up. And part of the reason they'll sometimes post it on the social media is so that other people see that they're responding to complaints.
So basically it is very important, both of you are saying similar things, which is very important to interact with a person who's providing a negative feedback. And,
unless they're just being negative for the sake of being negative, it's kind of silly.
Anything else you two would add?
Well, I think the immediate instinct is to, oh my gosh, delete. You don't want anyone to see, someone saying that, because once something is online, it's online for, ever. But it's such a good opportunity to create a positive impression about your brand by addressing the issue if it's one that's worth addressing. We don't get, we've actually, our comments have started to pick up in the last couple of weeks quite dramatically. But, the nature of the content that we publish is such that we don't get a whole lot of, vocal criticism. Unless we get an ingredient in a recipe wrong, then all hell breaks loose. But I spent some time at the Tyee, which has an incredibly active comments culture, and they will publish stories which get, that might get 50 or 60 comments on a story, and they actually had to dedicate a resource half-time to just filtering and managing the comments, and that included giving people warnings if they broke the terms of service, if they were attacking others or what have you, if they weren't constructive, kicking people off the comment forums from time to time, and really they had a system where they would actually filter comments. They had sort of a two-tiered comment system where there was all comments and then best comments. So if you default, when you land on a page, it defaulted to best comments, but someone was manually promoting all of the best comments into that sort of tab. Take a look at it, it's really great, but they get a large volume of comments, so it was warranted. With us, it's not the case. So, but it really depends on, what kind of comments you're attracting and how many resources you need to allocate to that. But having a basic policy is really important, I think.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, just to bring it down a notch again, if you're just going into blogging or your publication is for the first time, you always have the option of approving or trashing comments before they're published. So there shouldn't be a concern on that end that something's going to slip through if you select that option.
And actually, if I, another question is actually, is your company or your publication or your blog, do they have that policy? What do you have right now? Are you letting users write a comment right away and it's going to be posted and you'll react to it? Or do you authorize a user before, a comment before it's actually published? What are you doing right now on your blog, Rebecca?
On my site, if you're a first-time commenter, you're automatically held for moderation, which means I need to approve you. And if you have that, that's kind of your green light to go, so you can publish more comments on my site. But at any time, you can, put something into moderation or delete it if you need to. But I just have that one first barrier. So if you approve once, you're good to go, and then, yeah.
Okay.
We actually let all comments go through, and just historically in our experience, people are very civil and they're very nice. I mean, we're not dealing with the most controversial subjects.
We used to have it so that when you posted it just went live onto the site, but we changed it, not because of negative comments, but because of the amount of spam that we were getting. We changed it to an approval queue that we have on the site, so all the comments have to be approved. But we're actually looking at changing it back and just putting in like some kind of little thing people have to answer to be approved so that it'll weed out a lot of the spam. So I think we're moving towards having people being able to publish comments right away as long as they sign up as a user.
Now we're similar. It was a tough call being a new brand. We actually decided to remove all barriers to commenting because we wanted to encourage people to do so, to build our community. So right now it's wide open. You can post anonymous comments. You don't have to register or anything like that. However, because the volume of our comments is starting to grow and we are starting to see more spam, I think we're at the point where we're going to have a conversation pretty soon about adding some sort of a barrier. It'll probably just be a CAPTCHA to start, which is the letters and numbers to show you're a human and not a robot. So we'll probably start with that and see if that helps filter the spam. And then if it gets worse, we might have to go to a registration system. Some sites make you register so they actually have your name and email address before you can post. But yeah, we're not there yet. So.
Thank you. Any other
questions? Facebook. Sorry, I'm being reminded from the audience. We're looking at using Facebook Connect as well as a login system for our comments, but we haven't. We're waiting for the developers to build that.
I mean, not necessarily with blogs, but certainly including blogs with online in general. I think the biggest trend and the sort of most important thing that's going on right now is the move to mobile. Already in 2011, more mobile devices were sold than desktop computers. So many people access the internet from their phones, from their tablets. It seems to be going the way of the majority of people will be accessing the internet that way eventually. So having a mobile strategy is really, really important, making sure that your website or your blog is optimized for mobile devices. Within that, there's all of the Android devices, which have like all different screen sizes. So there, you can have a mobile site that works on an iPad but doesn't necessarily work on anything else. So there's a lot of changes in technology right now that I think are really going to inform where online content goes. Digital magazines are huge. A lot of publications are seeing huge numbers in terms of digital subscriptions and downloads. At the same time, print magazines are really, really popular, and I don't think they'll ever totally disappear. But yeah, I think that the big thing for your blog or your magazine is really looking at your brand and separating it from the platform, and seeing your brand as what you do and how you do it and who you're speaking to, and being really open to delivering your brand across a variety of different platforms is really key to the next few years and where the online and publishing will seem to be.
Anybody would like to add anything else?
I kind of see a trend where the wild west of the internet is waning a bit, and in the years ahead, I think the movement will be towards fewer and more reputable blogs overall, and it really, I think, probably an overall decline in what we think of as blogging now in favor of sites like things like Tumblr and Pinterest and things like that.
Anybody else would like, Rebecca and Lisa? Lisa?
Sure, I'll add, just to add to what Tara said, because I totally agree. But I think that so many publishers still have a print first sort of way of operating, and I think we have to get away from that and really think not even digital first, but whatever platform, customize the content for whatever platform it's being delivered on. So if we're going mobile, I think we need to make sure we have an understanding of how people access and interact with content on mobile platforms. And they're still so new that I don't know that we know that yet, but I think it's important to realize that every medium is used differently. And we need to customize content for those specific channels. But I don't think content is going away. There's always this panic, about whether the previous medium is going to die. And I don't think there's ever going to stop being a demand for content and quality content. So I think focusing on quality content is always going to be really important.
Rebecca, any last words?
No, I just agree that, I agree that, things are going mobile, that's the trend. And that content is still very important. I think that, sites like Tumblr and Pinterest kind of, they're great for sharing, for visual, for scattering things around, but people still also want that to read something. They still also want that resource. And I remember when Twitter first started, there were at least 5 other services that were just like it, that did the exact same thing, but it's the one that rose up. And there's various other social networks along the way, but Facebook's the one that rose up. So all of these things are going to come along and be the kind of the next the next thing, or be popular, the popular thing of the day, just not Google Plus. But you still need to have, I touched on it before, kind of have that home base online. So whatever that is, if it's your blog, if it's your main general website too, having that home base that can draw in from all these social networks and allow people to take your content and share it across them too is important.
Great. And coming from an editorial background, I try not to think too much about the money, and I let the sales reps worry about that. I mean, still, in this day and age, it's still about traffic. I mean, making money online often comes down to how much traffic you can get, but it's such a different game online when it comes to ad sales. I wish I had the answer. Maybe do you?
I mean, I think for most publications, their bread and butter is still the print publication and the ads there. There are certainly, especially bigger, more national publications that make significant revenue from their online properties. New York Magazine is actually really interesting, sort of stands out on its own. New York Magazine, nymag.com, actually makes more money than the print magazine does. And that's sort of this big online success story, but they started early, they did it very well, and they have a massive, massive online staff. And they're sort of the reverse to most magazines, where their online actually has a bigger staff than a print magazine does, and their online ad revenues surpass their print.
Anything else you'd like to add? Well, if I may add, actually, there's one thing that is very key to anything that is online and very valuable is all the information. And one of you pointed to that earlier on, is all the information you can gather about your users. So any ways that you can communicate directly with your user is extremely valuable and has a price for advertisers. So when you're looking to generate higher revenues from your online content, that relationship with a reader that you have, that you're able to build with all your different platforms, digital platform, is extremely valuable, and that's what should be used to increase your revenue that you generate.
Even like newspapers like The Province now, like I work at the PR end of it, but I also blog for them, but I work for a company, and I noticed that the readership, the circulation is way bigger online for The Province than the actual newspaper. That's why they're sitting there out at the SkyTrains, handing out, because they're trying to get the readership up for the print. But in some formats, in those platforms, print is dying, like the newspapers are dying, and they are taking it digital. So like even in the newsroom, like for the Vancouver Sun, a lot of they're blogging as well to support drive traffic as well to their stories, or they'll do a supplementary blog to their story, like an opinion blog. And so the journalists in the newsroom also have to become bloggers, like they're also having to learn those digital skills. It's-
Well, and this is great because it's actually a great segue to, and you'll be laughing at this one, but to our next remix issue, which will be May 23rd, actually, and it will be about multi-platform publishing. So we have actually a number of panelists that will come from different backgrounds, from publishing, magazine publishing, from news broadcasting, from gaming perspective, to bring in their point of view on multi-platform publishing, which is, as we're realizing, very important and at the forefront of our work today in the magazine publishing industry. So unless there are any other questions, are there any other questions to add? No? Then we'll conclude this first issue of Remix. Thank you very much for all of you great panelists. It's been very interesting, and thank you as well to all of you for attending and joining in the discussion. And please stay with us to chat. And yes, there's some food to be eaten and some drinks to be drank, so please stay around, and everybody here, all the panelists, will be happy to answer any other questions you may have. So thank you very much.